everyone, it's Shel C from PaperOcotilloStudio. Today I'm sharing with you a couple of collage birthday cards that I made. February is a big month in my family. There's a ton of birthdays. And so I needed to make some cards for some different people that had birthdays in February. I decided to use the 6x6 size envelopes that I have, which are kind of a vellum envelope. And I think that's fun to mail because you can see the card through it. And so I made 6x6 cards. That's a 12x12 piece of cardstock cut in half and then folded in half. And that makes 2 cards. And then I had this scrap of watercolor, 140-pound watercolor paper, which is a good thing to use for collage. And I had something I'd messed up, a chart I'd messed up. So I just cut that into 5.5 by 5.5, knowing that I would want that layer to be on the top and then have some sort of a color layer underneath to frame it, and then the white on the outside, because I made white folded cards. So I got out a bunch of different interesting paper scraps from the little bin that is on my desk next to where I work. Just random stuff that's been around. It's been used before. And I started to put on collage, then I decided I wanted to add some color and pattern to the background. So I got out 3 different colors of acrylic paint and a gift card to apply it. And I had another piece that I had cut 5.5 by 5.5 to make a second card. Now that is a smooth cardstock as opposed to this one on the right, which is some watercolor paper. And when I went to do the paint removal with a little stencil from Stencil Club, they looked different. And I don't know if you can really tell on the video, but just the difference in the types of paper kind of changed the look of it. But I didn't care. They both looked cool. So I used a baby wipe to remove some of the wet paint before it had dried using a stencil, and that's a fun way to add a little bit of pattern to something. So once I had the pieces dry, I just dried them with my heat tool. I started the collage process, and I like paper that has pattern on it. I like paper that has colors on it, and these are all different types of paper. Also different thicknesses of paper. The first one I put on was tissue, which had some stamping on it. The next one was some double-sided scrapbook paper, the one with the stripes. Then there's some gel printed text weight paper that is actually the edges. When I use a piece of paper to clean up as I'm gel printing the edges around the piece of paper that I'm printing, I often get something that looks like this, and I think they're really cool. They have layers of paint on them that are kind of in stripes, and so I just tear them and put them on. There's some more tissue paper that is actually a purchased tissue paper, the one with the music on it. Scrapbook paper, just all kinds of things. That yellow piece is something that I had cut something else out of, but it made an interesting shape. So I thought I would keep it in my scrap pile, and yeah, it looks pretty cool. And then the purple one is had some numbers punched out of it with a die cut machine, and that looks pretty cool. So I'm just adding different papers depending on shape and color, and just collaging. This is something I love to do, just kind of an abstract collage, gluing paper to stuff. And the matte gel medium works okay for pretty much all the thicknesses. I even, on the other card, I think I add some heavyweight watercolor paper and some Yupo paper, which are 2 other kinds of paper. Now this is a piece of corrugated paper, and I decided that it looked kind of cool there, kind of balancing against that other purple piece. And I decided that I would put a bird on there. Now I had this little vellum envelope of birds and butterflies, and I know that they must have come in Happy Mail, but I don't know who they came from. They're they look like they're printed, but probably done with water or with pencil first and then printed out. They're not stickers. They're just die cut type things, and I wished that I had cut the white off of it. But I didn't. So then I had to deal with it. So I put the little bird on there, adding a few more bits and pieces here and there to kind of balance everything. And till it makes me happy, I decided I needed some green. And I had this interesting alcohol ink scraped watercolor paper from something that I had made. And I think it was an ATC. And I don't know why it has something cut out of it. I don't know. But anyway, it's a scrap. And it was in my scrap bin. And I just thought it looked cool having that pattern across it as if it had something scraped across it. But I'm pretty sure it's alcohol ink. So then I set that one aside to dry and moved on to the next one. Now this one is a smooth cardstock base, so it doesn't stay as flat as I'm collaging. It wants to curl, but that's just the nature of the paper. Once it gets glued to two other pieces of cardstock, it's going to be flat, so it's not that big a deal. So this time I started out with this printed tissue paper. I believe it's from, I think the company's called Hazel and Ruby, or Ruby and Hazel, I think. It's a big roll of printed tissue paper that has all different types of sections with words, and then in some sections there's music paper. And so I have some scraps of it that were just in there. I haven't actually got the roll out in ages. The roll has not been touched, but I have scraps everywhere, so I can just use the little scraps in this type of project. So here's where I'm putting on some watercolored cardstock that got trimmed off of an edge of a project. And then this one across the bottom going horizontally is Yupo paper with alcohol ink that was trimmed off of a project. Sometimes you trim things down and layer them onto other things, and that's what these are. Now this piece is really cool, and it's printed on both sides and has the word February on it, but I have no idea where it came from. Absolutely no idea. I just found it in my scraps, and I'm like, what is this? I mean, it looks like it must have come from a calendar, but I don't remember having a calendar like that. I don't know. Maybe it came in Happy Mail. Somebody had a scrap of it, and sometimes in Happy Mail I'll get like a pile of scraps of things that are just colorful papers, which is exactly what I love. So then I use them in collage, and I think that's why people will send them to me. But I just thought that piece was cool with the flowers on it, and it's very graphic looking. No idea where it came from. It's always fun when you're cleaning up the floor in your craft room and there's all these pretty papers and you pick them up and then you start playing with them. I have a ton of papers under my desk that have, fallen on the floor, and I know there's probably some real gems in there, but I haven't cleaned up. But I'm going to need to. I have a deadline of March 13th to get all the floor in my craft room cleaned up and everything put away so that I can put some air mattresses in there for some friends who are coming to visit. So I have a deadline of cleaning it up, and that's helpful. When you have an actual reason to clean, it makes it so much easier to clean. So I thought I needed a little bit more orange. I found a little orange scrap, and yeah, I think this birthday card will be for my mother, and that's the reason that I put the butterfly on it, because she really likes butterflies, and her birthday's in February. So is my middle child's birthday, and also my husband's birthday, and everybody's birthday is in February. So it's just how it goes. So I got out the little butterflies that were in that same vellum envelope. You can see it right there. Maybe you recognize it. Maybe you're the one who sent it to me. I don't know, but they worked out great for these cards. Now, could I have drawn something? Could I have stamped something? Sure. But, these were there on the desk and they worked out perfect. So I'm happy with them. So I went back to working on the first card. It's good to work on two projects at the same time because you can let one dry while you're working on the other one. I had this little scrap of trim, some type of a sewing trim, and I thought I wanted the bird to be on a branch originally, but this is kind of an abstract, deconstructed branch idea. So I put the trim across, and then I wanted to add a little bit of scraps to the bird to make it look less printed. You know, it is printed, but I wanted to make it look less. So I started tearing little tiny scraps of paper in purples, pinks, lavenders, and started to glue them on the bird. And this time I'm just using a glue stick because these are such tiny little pieces of paper that I don't think that they're going to go anywhere with just a little bit of glue stick. And that's a craft glue stick from Elmer's, which is supposed to be permanent. So I buy them in sets of 4, and I use them for teeny tiny little bits of paper. And I think that makes the bird look more, you know, like I touched it, like I did something to it. I didn't just leave it in its printed form. I like it better that way. It doesn't change the colors because the colors were already on there like that, but it changes the look of it just a little bit so that you can see that my hands touched it, even though it's a printed thing. So what did I do next? I can't remember. I probably did some line work. Yeah, some of the paper went over the lines where there had been little illustration lines on the bird, so I put them back in with a permanent pen. This is a Pentel pocket brush pen, but I could have used a Posca pen or whatever. That just happened to be on my desk. It's India ink. And then I still had that pesky white around the bird, which was bugging me. Sometimes you'll be able to get a die cut type of a thing to cut something out that goes right up to the lines, but a lot of times things like punches and die cuts and things, if they're paired with a stamped image or something, they do leave that white edge, and I just should have cut that off. And when I use the other birds, I will sometime in the future, I don't know when, if I use those other birds, I will cut the white off. Didn't bother me as much on the butterfly for some reason, but really bothered me on the bird. So I'm using some water-soluble graphite to add some shading, which is something I do anyway, but I didn't want to just add the shading around the edges of the bird because then I would have white. I would have bird, then white, then shadow. So I went up over the edges of that white and tried to obliterate it and add the shadows in, make the glued on piece feel like more a part of the composition. And I also added some of that gray graphite watery look around some areas of the card to kind of blend everything together. That's something that I often do with collage. I like to blend stuff together. And then I thought I would add a little bit of white highlight with the Posca pen, and ended up even adding some more at the end, some more like little decorator type white Posca pen on the bird. But right now I'm just adding some highlights. White Posca, you know, I can't do a project without that. And then I also added some splatters with the white Posca. I like to do that a lot. I think it looks interesting. I got out a stamp set. This one is from Stampin' Up! From, 15 years ago. Probably not in existence anymore, but there's lots of this type of a thing out there for stamps. This is a birthday set. It has some different sayings in it, and I'm going to use it to put happy birthday on the front of the card. First, I'm going to glue it to a piece of black glossy cardstock as a layer, which I think frames it and makes it look better. Just framing something with a layer just makes it look better. I don't care what it is. It just makes it look better. Even if you have a painting or something and you get a mat and frame it inside the frame, it just looks better. Just looks better to me. And then I glued this on the 6x6 card, which is 12x12 cardstock cut in half and folded. And that makes it into a card instead of just a thing. Got out some black archival ink. The saying that I stamped on the inside says, "Life is not a matter of counting years, it's a matter of making years count." And then I also stamped a little strip with Happy Birthday to glue on the front and glued that on the front of the card. So then I'm working next on the similar process on the butterfly card. Somehow I lost some footage here, I think, because the first thing I did was to take a light blue marker, which is a Faber-Castell pet pen, and color the white around the butterfly light blue. And that made a huge difference. It made it blend in. And I'm not sure what happened to that footage. I know the camera was on. I don't know. Something happened in the editing process, I guess. But then I could put the shadows around the edge with this water-soluble graphite, and you really don't notice that what was a white die-cut edge around the butterfly as much. And then I did the same thing, put it on a piece of black shiny cardstock and then the white card. And then I need to put Happy Birthday on there. And so I decided to use the same stamp set, different stamp, and stamp it with the, before I did, there's one stamp in there that just says HB, and I stamped that on the back like a watermark, and then wrote my name, Shel C, next to it, signing it, signature, whatever you want to call it. And then on a scrap piece, I stamped this other Happy Birthday, tore it on the edge, trimmed it a little bit, and then glued that on the front of the card. And, you know, that makes it a little bit better, different, not better, different than the other one because it's a different Happy Birthday. But the final thing I did, and I guess that the footage of me doing it on the other card must have gotten lost because I don't remember. I put sequins on. And on the blue and green, blue, purple bird one, I put turquoise and bright green and dark green sequins along that trim that's supposed to be the branch as kind of like deconstructed leaves on there. With this one, I'm putting gold, pink, and orange sequins. And I'm using some glue called iCraft mixed media glue, and I like it because it has a very fine tip. It's great for putting on sequins. So, yeah, that's what I did. I think I stamped the same saying on the inside of this card that I did on the other one because that's a good one. I like it. Yeah. I looked in there for a different one and I decided this one was good. So, yeah, here's where I just added a little bit more white. I hope you've enjoyed this. Please remember to give it a thumbs up, comment, question below, subscribe if you haven't already. All those things. That's it for me. Thanks. Bye-bye.